The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Mark Andrews sent a scathing message to those who think he is slowing down.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
I am very excited for this game. I have been really since the schedule came out.
Yes.
The Ravens, they love playing in prime time. And I think for both these teams, there are a lot of things you can probably tell about them once the clock hit zero in this game. A lot of things these teams are probably trying to figure out about themselves as well after the first 2 weeks of the season.
Oh, no question about it. And these are two heavyweights, and this is an awesome matchup. These two teams don't play against each other a lot. And to get on this Monday Night Football stage, Kevin, is very exciting. Two offenses that can really go. And you got to figure for our FanDuel friends out there that a lot of overs will be out there for this Lions-Ravens team. I expect a high-scoring game.
I think it will be. I'm right there with you. And I know, Matt, in Detroit, it's been a tale of two teams in the first couple weeks of the season. Obviously, the loss of the Packers in week 1, followed by a thumping of the Bears in week number 2. What's the biggest storyline in Detroit right now as we get ready for this game on Monday night?
I think the biggest storyline is that the Lions are back. I mean, after week 1 and how embarrassing that certainly was in Green Bay and how poorly they played, the opportunity to on a pretty big stage against their former offensive coordinator and Ben Johnson to really wallop the Chicago Bears and do it in an impressive fashion to the point, and you and I talked about this before we hit record, running up the score basically on them late. Now everybody feels good again. The good feeling is back. The good vibe is back. Jared Goff, NFC Offensive Player of the Week, 5 touchdowns. And, you know, the weapons that are all – Isaac Tesla's made 2 plays. He has 2 catches on the year. That's it. He's the 4th receiver. But they've both been outstanding plays, one-handed catches. So the good vibes are back. The defense was good. And now the true test certainly comes against a high-level AFC team and having to try to stop Lamar Jackson. So should be interesting. How about in Baltimore? Obviously, the gag job in week 1, but I'm sure a good feeling after this past Sunday against the minor league Browns, right?
Yeah, would have been a lot harder to move past it if they weren't able to get the job done. And it was crazy, Matt, because the offense didn't necessarily play up to the level that they really are supposed to, particularly in the run game. Derrick Henry was held to just about 2 yards a carry. The Browns did a great job of stopping him, and the Ravens, you look up and they have 41 points. Lamar Jackson has 4 touchdowns, and you're like, oh, this doesn't even feel like they're really playing that well, and they still have 41 points. So they have scored 40 points in back-to-back games here to start the season, and that's a good sign as any. I do think, though, that some of the offense has had a bit of a slow start, which I think makes the start to their season even more incredible. Mark Andrews only has 2 catches on the year. He kind of talked about his slow start a little bit, saying that he doesn't really believe he's off to one because of the fact that he's been impactful as a blocker, springing Derrick Henry on some plays. And, you know, he says he's still an elite tight end. And I believe that too. I know it's not the popular opinion in Baltimore right now, but the Ravens possibly, it's not, we're going to have to wait till Monday night. They could be getting Isaiah Likely back from his broken foot in this game. We'll have to see how that unfolds over the course of the week. Then on the offensive line, I think is the other big story. They really struggle with that Browns defensive front at times. And, you know, Myles Garrett right now is arguably the best defensive player in the world. So that's something you have to kind of figure out. But, you know, in my opinion, you have guys like Roger Rosengarten, Daniel Falele, Andrew Voorhees. Ronnie Stanley struggled in this game against Cleveland as well. I think that, and we'll get to matchups a little bit later in the show, but that offensive line for Baltimore, I think the storyline is, you know, Lamar Jackson is the ultimate. He can make something out of nothing. If there's a quick win by a defender, it's not just a defender getting past your offensive lineman. It's also about getting Lamar Jackson down. So he can work with it, but, you know, you still want to have him feel comfortable in that pocket to just sit back there and sling it. Getting Likely back would be huge. Kyle Van Noy, obviously a Detroit Lions former player. He is expected to miss a couple of weeks. So obviously probably won't play in this game. Marlon Humphrey got picked up a groin injury, so not clear what his status is going to be. Injuries are always a storyline, Matt. How's Detroit's injury situation looking?
Injury situation is all right. I mean, I think the Lions feel pretty good about where they are. The biggest question mark is Marcus Davenport, but he's always hurt. I made the point on my show I kind of refer to him as Marcus Davenhurt because he just is never out there. When he had a sack in week 2 and finally got one, and it was nice to see. And there's so much talent and potential there, but he's just always injured. Brian Branch had a leg injury that turned out to just be a cramp, and that's it. So that's important. Taylor Decker had a shoulder last week, kept him out of practice. He played a fantastic game against the Bears, but knock on wood, the Lions, feel like they are pretty healthy. You mentioned Van Noy, and I brought this up on my show the other day. Mike Green going to get more snaps? That's a guy that the Lions passed on not once but twice in the draft this year, that a lot of people mocked him to Detroit. I know there were the off-field issues. Will he be getting more run if KVN is out?
That appears to be the plan. That's what I think is going to happen here. And look, Mike Green is a player that, you mentioned the Ravens felt comfortable enough taking him in the second round with everything that was surrounding him during the draft process and everything that happened off the field. And on the field, look, the production in college was clear. He was doing it against smaller schools, doing it against, you turn on that Ohio State tape, he was putting people in spin cycles on that field. But I think for him, it's just about getting better each and every single week. This will be his third game and kind of thrust into a big role. He certainly has the talent to be an every down player. He can provide some of that. He almost got a sack on Joe Flacco in week number 2. Would have been his first in his career. Would have been kind of poetic considering Joe's history with the Ravens. But I think that Mike Green's going to be the biggest beneficiary of the playing time that is up for grabs, assuming Van Noy does have to miss this game, which again, all reports are indicating that he will. So other than that, there's not necessarily another guy. David Ojabo would be the other one who was a second round pick out of Michigan a couple of years ago, but he suffered an injury during his pro day and really never has put anything on the tape for Baltimore to give him a consistent role. So it's going to be Odafe Owe, Tavius Robinson, and Mike Green in this one from the pass rushing department. But speaking of pass rushers, Matt, Aiden Hutchinson obviously suffered the injury last season. It was a brutal one. He's back now. How has he looked in his first couple games, first couple snaps back? Is this the player that, we remember, or is there still a bit of a ramp up that's happening right now?
Well, that's another story for this game is that Aiden Hutchinson, it looked to me like in week 1 at Green Bay, he was just kind of feeling things out. He was getting his sea legs under him, no pun intended, because he came back from a broken leg. He had a ton of pressures against the Bears, and it felt like middle of the second quarter on, it was the Aiden Hutchinson of old being able to get in there. And now having to chase down Lamar Jackson, having to try to corral the most elusive quarterback in the league and do that is a huge story for this game, because I think Aiden Hutchinson's confidence now is back. And I think that he just looks like himself, just looks like a guy that we all expected to, hit stardom again after last year's injury. So being able to somehow, run, I think, and we'll talk about this coming up in the matchup segment, but a guy like Brian Branch is going to be important too against Lamar. But the Lions in week 1 were nowhere near Jordan Love, nowhere near him. And I know the Packers offensive line is much better than the, remade Bears offensive line, which is really like reshuffling deck chairs on the Titanic in Chicago. Their O-line sucks every year. But all in all, I think that front for the Lions pressuring and might not be in sacks. They had 4 sacks last week on Caleb. But if they can just pressure and bother Lamar Jackson, they've got confidence now they didn't have a week ago.
This Monday night matchup between the Ravens and the Lions. And Matt, matchups galore, I think, in this game when it comes to both offense and defense for both teams. Even the special teams matchup, you got, I think, some storylines for that side of the ball as well, which maybe can be make or break. We saw last week for the Ravens, they had a blocked punt that kind of turned the tides of that Cleveland game pretty early and helped them kind of run away with that one. But for you, what matchup are you looking at as your big one to watch?
I touched on it earlier, Kevin. I see Brian Branch as such a weapon for this Lions defense. He's flying all over the field. He's great in the pass game, whether you put him at nickel corner, whether he's at safety alongside Kirby Joseph. But in this game, Lamar Jackson turning the corner, Lamar Jackson getting free and getting loose. If they allow 20, 25-yard runs, a 3rd and 9, and he gets 12, that's where Branch comes in. He just has such a nose for the football. He's like a Scud missile out there. And if he is able to corral Lamar, that's kind of the matchup. I know there have been teams that have had the linebacker spy on him, going back to his days at Louisville. But in this instance, Branch being able to run him down, Jackson versus Branch, I see as being a big-time matchup. And I'll give you another one. I truly believe that Andrews is a guy they're going to target. I'm sure they're hearing about, and you mentioned it before. Maybe the production isn't there. Is he going to be able to get behind the Lions defense? Can the linebackers hang with him if it's an Anzalone in coverage or a Derek Barnes, even Jack Campbell to an extent, or if it's a safety on Mark Andrews? I think that's one guy that is almost due for a big game, and the Lions have to find a way to cover him. They did a really good job this past week on Loveland and Kmet. I don't know why the Bears didn't target their first round pick Loveland more. But I see that as being a couple of matchups to keep an eye on, especially for the Lions defensively. How about on your side?
Hey, I think for the Ravens, there are a couple of different ones that I could go with on the offensive side of the ball. But I think if it is Zay Flowers matched up with that, I assume to be Terrion Arnold, correct? Is that one-on-one? Is that what it would look like?
I would say DJ Reed.
DJ Reed, okay.
On Zay Flowers, yeah.
Whoever is on Zay Flowers, that's going to be a matchup to watch because you talked about Mark Andrews. You talked about others as well that could maybe impact the offense and defense for both sides. But even like Rashad Bateman hasn't had a super strong start to the season. Zay Flowers has dominated the target share, over 40% of the targets right now in Baltimore. Zay has 20 targets through 2 games. The next closest player is Bateman with only 8. So Lamar Jackson is clearly favoring Zay. They've established that chemistry and connection. Zay's an elite separator. He's a 3-level receiver, but obviously there is talent in that Detroit secondary. And so I'm curious to see if they decide to shade more guys over towards Zay's side of the field. Are they going to send more attention over there? Because the beauty of Baltimore's offense, when it's all working, is that it's very hard to send attention to everybody because you have a lot of elite separators on that unit. And Zay's been a guy that has proven that even if it's just the short stuff, he can take a ball on a slant and cut it upfield and get you 10, 15, 20 yards on a ball he catches 1 yard past the line of scrimmage. They've utilized him a lot on reverses and end arounds. They've tried to get him involved in the screen game. He is a very big focal point of what they do on the offensive side of the ball right now. So look, I'm really curious to see what that looks like. And I think also another one, kind of flipping the script and talking about the Lions wide receivers, is the fact that we know that Jameson Williams, he's that deep threat. He's someone that can go and get a ball 60 yards to the house. The Ravens, they do not like to let teams beat them deep. They've used Malachi Starks, their first-round rookie, is a single high guy, kind of roaming that deep part of the field. That has allowed them to use Kyle Hamilton more in that role up towards the line of scrimmage. And Hamilton can play deep too, but using Starks in that role definitely allows you to use Hamilton in the way that you want him to. So I think it's going to be big. If the Lions start to hit on some of these big 30, 40-yard throws, and Jameson Williams is a big part of that, that could disrupt what Baltimore wants to do defensively, which is obviously keep everything in front of them. So that's something I'm watching as well. I mean, how do you expect Detroit to deploy Jameson Williams in this game? And do you think that the Lions wide receivers versus that Baltimore secondary is a big matchup to watch?
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
There is a chance that Brock Purdy will play against the Cardinals in Week 3.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
With the news of Brock Purdy doing a little limited practice, and Kyle Shanahan says there's a chance that he might still be able to play in Week 3. And with some bad injury news for the Arizona Cardinals, that line is actually moved to 2.5 points now. So what's going on over there in Arizona with these Cards?
Not even close to as bad as it could have been, Brian Peacock. Like, here's the thing. The Arizona Cardinals won week 1 by the skin of their teeth, avoided catastrophe, even though it shouldn't have happened. And that was only expounded upon in week 2, where absolute calamity almost happened, where the Carolina Panthers almost came back to beat the Cardinals at home. But the problem was the Cardinals lost 3 of their top corners after losing 2 of them before the season started. Garrett Williams, Max Melton, and rookie Will Johnson all went down what looked to all be pretty serious injuries. And news came out today. Jonathan Gannon met with the media. Garrett Williams is now on IR, but he has a chance to return. I thought that was an ACL. I'm not a doctor. I thought it was an ACL. He went down right away. Max Melton looked bad, missed the game, but he practiced today pretty much in full. And Will Johnson wasn't at practice. He's dealing with a groin, but there is an outside chance he plays on Sunday. And this could have been catastrophic for the Cardinals if all 3 guys missed as much time as it looked like they could have missed after Sunday.
Which injury has the biggest impact this week when you look at how the 49ers match up with those Arizona Cardinals? Is there one injury that you're like, man, this is one we could have really – this is a guy we really could have used this week?
Garrett Williams is not a name that's household. Do you remember when before Fred Warner was a household name? You knew he was really good. I knew he was really good. We've been doing this a long time together. I knew
he was wearing number 48 at one point. He was like, bad number, but awesome player. Number 48, right. Fred Warner. Yeah, still an all-pro.
So probably a year removed from being introduced into the NFL. That's where Garrett Williams is now. He was the highest Pro Football Focus rated zone corner last year. The dude was a 3rd-round pick just because he tore his ACL in December, his last season at Syracuse. The Cardinals nabbed him. The dude is an absolute stud. So it's always going to be him. Even though he plays in the slot more, the Cardinals have a defensive setup, which we'll talk about in the next segment, where you play 3 safeties and you move Garrett Williams to the outside, and that's where they're most comfortable. So it's going to be Garrett Williams. Max Melton is really leveled up, but Garrett Williams is the best corner the Cardinals have.
I really get the feeling that Kyle Shanahan is trying to make the Arizona Cardinals prepare for 2 quarterbacks. I don't think it's a reality that Brock Purdy is going to play this week, but he was limited at practice, and I saw some video of him, at least taking a drop back. And so he's going to give it a try. And if he can go, he's going to go. He's just one of those guys, and he's going to gut through it. The way that Mac Jones played might allow the 49ers to say, okay, Brock, you're 80%. It's not worth it because of what this turf toe can be. We don't need a Joe Burrow situation and you needing surgery and missing 3 months instead of a couple of weeks. So for that reason, I really don't think that Brock Purdy is going to play, but I do think that Kyle Shanahan likes the fact that he's at practice limited, so he can at least not rule him out yet. And but we'll see. I mean, there's been surprises before with who you thought might be able to play, who won't be able to play. And Kyle Shanahan, when the docs tell Kyle Shanahan, okay, this guy I think can play, and the player says I can play, Kyle Shanahan gives them every single carry you could possibly give them. I mean, he's done it before with running back. He's done it with every player. So, like, if you can go, you could go in Kyle Shanahan's locker room. So there is that factor as well with Brock Purdy. I think it's doubtful that he will play, but I think that Kyle Shanahan likes not knowing, because then he can be like, oh, yeah, I don't know. He might be able to play, because I think he likes the Cardinals preparing for both quarterbacks. Offense, not that different, though, so I don't know if it's going to really change what the Cards are spending their hours on this week of practice.
Egomania just morphed into another form is all it is from Kyle Shanahan, which is fine. Listen, Mac Jones, okay, and this isn't like, could Mac Jones have done exactly what Brock Purdy did if they drafted Mac Jones? That's not what I'm going to ask you. Mac Jones looked more than competent last week. Okay, when you have really good skill position players, even with Kittle out, when you've got Trent Williams, when you've got at least an average to slightly above average offensive line and Christian McCaffrey, is Mac Jones talented enough to be, if say Brock Purdy was 85%, are you still starting Mac Jones to kind of one more week to see? Like, is this a wait and see kind of thing?
I think waiting for Brock Purdy to be 100% is more about Brock Purdy not missing more time than it is about you need him in there at 85% over Mac Jones. I think is the best way to put it. I think, 85% Brock Purdy would be fine, and I would probably start him there. If you think that there's no possible way that he could injure himself further and really hurt that turf toe injury, which can be a long-term injury. And initially it was, 2 to 5 weeks, and it's turned out it might only be 1 week if he actually does end up playing. So less about performance, more about long-term injury, I think, for Brock Purdy there. And Mac Jones did play really well, but again, And the Arizona Cardinals are familiar with last week's opponent for the 49ers, the New Orleans Saints. And both those games against the Saints for these two teams went similar, where the Saints aren't very good, thankfully, because, the 49ers and the Cardinals probably didn't play their best game necessarily, but still got out with wins, because I don't think the Saints are that good. Maybe you've got a different feel from those games against the Saints, but I kind of look at these games and like, okay, these were teams early in the season, kind of not quite ready for, mid-season form yet. And thankfully you're playing against the New Orleans Saints, which is why I'm fascinated to see how this goes in week 3 against the Cardinals now at 2-0.
Yeah, this is going to be the barometer check. Cause I think, even though the Cardinals playing the Saints in week 1 was a preseason game. Like, it was a preseason game. Luckily they skated out with a win. I don't know why people aren't talking about how Spencer Rattler's playing. He torched, in some respects, the 49ers at times on defense, and that's not a knock. He looked very, very clean and very comfortable. So just because it was the Saints doesn't mean it was the worst team we've ever seen in the NFL, which is what they're kind of getting painted as. Now, with the Cardinals in Carolina, that was more the litmus test like you had in New Orleans last week, where it's like that was kind of it. 2 bad teams you're supposed to beat didn't necessarily go as swimmingly as you'd hoped, even though it was week 2 and you were kind of the cobwebs off. For me, because you're right, this is the barometer check. And this is the perfect time to discuss this to my, fears, everydayers and everything. Look at this man next to me, okay? You talk about injuries, they're never healthy and they always win games. Okay, so just because the Cardinals are dealing with some sort of adversity early in the season doesn't mean with good coaching it's not circumventable. And like with George Kittle, he's a double-edged sword. He's elite when he's on the field, and he's not on the field 16 games every year. So it's like you roll with the punches, you deal with what you got to deal with, and you move the hell forward and hope you win more games than you lose. I mean, because the 49ers are never healthy. Ever. All the stars are never healthy.
And the last time they were, 2023 is they were top 5 health that year and went to the Super Bowl, right? And so that's, and they're bottom 5 injury team every other year aside from that. And it's still gone to championship games and Super Bowls. So look, and everyone's hurt every week anyway. So you got to throw that out the window. And I know it hurts to have some certain players gone over others, but you got to find a way to win. And the 49ers are a well-coached football team. So that's one of the key matchups for me in this game.
The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet in the moment. Player props, same-game parlays, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Locked on Bengals, Locked on Vikings, crossing over for what I guess is now a battle of the backups.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
If I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd only have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. So we're getting Jake Browning again in US Bank Stadium. It's like his 2021 preseason all over again, James.
Yeah, look, I don't even know where to start, but I guess we should start with Jake Browning, right?
We have to start with the backup thing that's happening.
Yeah.
This is the headline of the game.
And no doubt about it. And it's like, man, I was so looking forward to the Joe Burrow, Brian Flores chess match. And like when the schedule came, I thought about that. And,
I was so scared of this one I still like Vikings, like because of what happened in the last game, like Vikings fans are like maybe the most scared fan base of Jake Browning specifically. Like he's already hurt us once.
Yeah.
But going into this game, I was like, oh man, Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor, quick strike, like get the ball out kind of quarterback, totally will neutralize the blitz. I thought he was like, the Bengals are perfectly set up to neutralize the Brian Flores blitz. And I was like, man, that one's going to be a tough matchup. And the teeth gets taken out of it a little bit.
It does. And it's a bummer, and it's a bummer for a few reasons. I mean, obviously the biggest story of the week for the Bengals is Joe Burrow going out, and it overshadowed, much to Zach Taylor's. He pretended he was surprised. He's like, it doesn't feel like we're 2-0, because they're 2-0 for the first time since 2018. Zach Taylor got here.
The fast start Bengals.
Right. They get off to this fast start, and everyone all week is like, including me, I'd trade those 2 wins for Joe Burrow. Like, obviously, you'd rather have Joe Burrow.
For sure.
And then it's so interesting to have the Jake Browning versus Vikings just element of it. And I thought about that during the Jags game, is I'm like, man, if Browning, before we knew what Burrow was dealing with, if Burrow was going to come back or not, I'm like, Browning has to start next week. He's going to Minnesota. And so, that is a fun, it's not the headline here in Cincinnati, but I think by the time we get to Sunday, that's going to be a fun storyline for sure.
And he kind of already had his revenge game, right? And he if I recall, he came out and said later, he's like, I probably shouldn't have said, like, you shouldn't have cut me. And he kind of regretted it. He was just a little wrapped up in the moment, like it happens. But I wonder if there's a little bulletin board on that for the Vikings defense that, like, I don't know how much you guys paid attention to how that 2023 season ended for the Vikings, but, you know, Kirk Cousins was out. It was Nick Mullins. We were backup against backup again. And that was kind of the day where, like, in that fourth quarter, in those adjustments that Zach Taylor made in that game, the Vikings defense never recovered from that getting put on tape. They got blown out, and then they got blown out again. Like, they did not win another game after that. And so that's why I kind of always looked at this one as like, okay, what does Zach Taylor have for us now? And even with Jake Browning, like, that doesn't change the fact, and it didn't last time, that Zach Taylor kind of had the secret sauce and showed everybody, and then everybody else copycatted, and it took a while for the Vikings defense to figure out a way to, like, play football again. So I wonder if it happens again. But then you got to the other side with Carson Wentz now. We haven't seen anything of Carson Wentz. He signed after the preseason. The Vikings had terrible backup quarterback play in the preseason. They cut everybody but an undrafted rookie out of Minnesota named Max Brosmer and brought in Carson Wentz. So we have no idea what we're going to see. And now we're going to be treated to Carson Wentz for an entire tour of the AFC South here over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. That I have to ask you, starting this way, because I do think Bengals fans wondered in the moment. I certainly did. This version of JJ McCarthy, is Carson Wentz the better option, like, for this week?
I mean, people are going to ask that, but I don't think that that's smart at all. Even if, you know, yeah, sure, maybe a veteran backup style quarterback is going to do better than your struggling rookie. But you guys had this in the early days with Joe Burrow too. Guys have to work through it. So, you know, benching a kid that you drafted 10th overall and basically aligned your entire franchise around and your entire career path around, if you're Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, and then giving up after that, after 6 days, that would be pretty bad. And I would even say fireable. And I think people calling for that probably just they would probably get fired too if they were in this job.
Oh, no doubt. I'm not saying bench him. I just mean it's a way to maybe you could all be like, it's almost scarier, I would say, if you're the Bengals with the unknown with Carson. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
you don't have any tape on him. There is that weird thing. Like, this is in no way would the Vikings choose this, right? Sure. But yeah, the argument would be that, you know, hey, he's a veteran. He knows how to get in and out of the huddle a little faster. The Vikings have had a ton of problems with this. They're breaking the huddle at 10 seconds, and the play clock is running down on them all the time. D-line is teeing off because you can't do a snap count anymore. They've had all kinds of problems with, like, the timing of stuff, but it's also kind of hard to time out with a quarterback you've never practiced with. So I feel like we're kind of just trading some problems for other problems right now. Sure. The thing is, from the Bengals side of it, that defense doesn't know what those problems actually are or how to exploit them and attack them because they don't have any tape to work off of. So they're going to have to kind of figure that out on the fly for a fairly maligned unit.
Yeah, I think that's what's so intriguing to me is this young Bengals defense that has 4 interceptions in 2 weeks. And you could say, oh, well, Carson Wentz is going to give you a chances too. And maybe he will.
So you're getting picks. Oh, 100%.
But you had the film on McCarthy, and outside of that one of 8 quarters of football, essentially, where he was awesome, by the way, I watched that. It's like, man, now you have this unknown with Carson Wentz. I don't know. I think it's interesting, but at the same time, it isn't as sexy as Joe Burrow versus JJ McCarthy. And I would love that element of it.
Yeah.
and we don't get that. That doesn't mean it's not going to be interesting though. Like I think this is going to be a really fun game and an entertaining game, even if it isn't what we thought it would be 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Yeah, there will be fun and weird and wild elements. I think both of these quarterbacks have a propensity to, have a disaster play here or there, to have some game swinging mistake. But honestly, when it comes down to these battles of the backups, it kind of feels like it comes down to like elsewhere on the roster. I don't know. We'll get into more of those matchups a little later. But I think the goal for both of these teams is to just hide your quarterback. Figure out a way to make it come down to Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. Figure out a way to make it come down to Trey Hendrickson or Jonathan Grenard. Like, make the game about your stars and make it so that we're not walking away from this one being like, hey, do you remember the Carson Wentz disaster game or the Jake Browning disaster game?
I think it's a great point because that's how the Bengals are so Joe Burrow driven. And that is why they win when they win most of the time with Joe. And now they can't be that way. And in the Vikings, as J.J. McCarthy comes along or Carson Wentz, they're going to have to win without being quarterback dominant at times. Well, the Bengals are going to have to – we're going to see if they can do that. And they were able to do it some in 2023 when Jake Browning came in. Obviously, Vikings fans are aware of that. Mm-hmm. But can they do it again? Like, they shouldn't have won the other day. Like, the Jags and Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen.
Well, the Jags aren't a real football team. So,
like those guys, like they made so many mistakes to leave the door open for the Bengals. I mean, Jake Browning throws 3 picks and he still gets the ball with the chance to go win. It's wild to think of, but that's what happened. And so, yeah, I agree with you. One, your quarterback can't make those kind of mistakes and have 3 interceptions, even though one wasn't his fault. 2, the other guys around him are going to have to pick him up, whether it's the Vikings or the Bengals.
And that's just how it has to be with a backup quarterback. It's going to have to be this way for both of our teams moving forward here. Although you guys are out. Can I break some news to Bengals fans?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it'll be like the next day when they're listening to this. But as we are recording this, the Bengals officially placed Joe Burrow on injured reserve. Little roster transaction news there for you.
There we go. Oh, man.
We're all very happy here on the Locked On Crossover.